All right, welcome everyone. Today I have with me Robby. Robby just purchased a home, so he's a first-time home buyer, and I invited him to come on here because I wanted him to share with us basically a success story of you purchasing a home, and you purchased in a super tough market. I think this is one of the
Yeah.
more difficult markets that we've seen over the past 20, 30 years.
Mhm.
And so I know that you put in multiple offers, you were facing those, other offers beating out yours, and you finally were able to get an offer accepted, move into a home, and now you're in your basement, soon to be finished, right? It
Yeah,
turned
soon
into
to be. Yeah,
a nice office, and I'm sure it's gonna be a nice little space for you. So,
sure.
first of all, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time here. Could you
My
share
pleasure.
a little bit of your story and kind of what you've been going through and how you got started into maybe first the conversation that started going from renting to deciding you want to start purchasing?
Right. So it was about a quarter way through the pandemic, and the place that I was renting with my now wife and our daughter was nearing the end of its life. So we were going to move somewhere, and I was wanting, frankly, to buy. I've been wanting to buy for a while now, and because at that point my office had decided, well, we no longer have to come in. I'm basically on a permanent remote status. That opened up possibilities as far as where I move, because obviously, just like I'm talking to you now, I can work from anywhere. So that's when we started, and I'm sure you saw on your side of the equation too that rural markets, suburban markets were becoming more and more popular. I didn't realize how popular until I started looking up in the far north, I guess exurbs you'd call them, where we have now. So that's what really started the conversation is, hey, now I can live wherever. I'm in a financial position where this makes sense. Yes, there's a pandemic going on, but ultimately I'm going to have to move somewhere, either renting somewhere else or
Hmm.
buying a house. And despite the challenges of the market, it just seemed like the time. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. So you decided to move more into a rural area, which is a little bit unfamiliar for you.
well,
Um,
very much so.
yeah. What can you walk me through that decision to going from what you're familiar with to something that's a little bit more unfamiliar? Because I think a lot of people when they're moving, they're often going into environments that are completely different than what they're used to. So were there things
Sure.
that you did to prepare for that, or was it just conversations that you had with your family?
Yeah, so there was a lot of things now that I have, now that I have a 20-month-old daughter. It's not just, considerations about me. It's, where is she going to grow up? Where is she going to go to school? What's
Mm,
going to be
yeah.
the best environment for her? And then at the same time, I've worked all over the country now. So I started my career in Baltimore, Maryland, and then Chicago, and I've also had Seattle under my belt. So all these very, very densely populated urban centers. And after a while, it just wears on you, or at least it did me. It's just
Hmm.
very stressful. You feel like even though you're in your own space, you don't have any like real privacy. Um, and I was just wanting to get away from that. When I was in a situation where I didn't have to, um, be in that environment to earn a living, it just made more sense. And to be completely honest, since I moved out here, my stress level has definitely decreased. It's so
Mm,
much more
yeah.
back. Just as everything from the people to I don't know, just when there's less people around, my stress level has definitely just decreased. Um, so it was tough though. I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, I don't have as many options for dining as I once did for sure. That's the big thing. Having to drive a ways to even, get to a Walmart or a grocery store is also a different thing. But if you're into the outdoors, and I certainly am, I like hunting, I like fishing. This stuff is great. So, and probably the other biggest X factor is it's so much cheaper. I mean, there's
Mm,
no way
yeah.
I got this kind of house in anywhere near the price for
Yeah.
what I did up here. So it's just
Yeah.
cheap.
Yeah, that's super interesting to hear because I think that's a frustration that a lot of people are facing is
Mm-hmm.
they tend to be around the more urban areas and they're seeing these
Mm-hmm.
prices are increasing and increasing and I can't keep up with it and I can't afford a home. And yeah, it makes sense. Like these are super densely populated areas that are growing exponentially. And so being able to move just a little bit out drastically increases affordability, especially to those areas that I think a lot of people, maybe uh, maybe what 2 years ago, you might not have thought about moving a little bit further away, right?
Probably not.
Yeah,
Probably
Uh,
not.
yeah, and then you start entertaining these ideas of, oh, maybe this would actually be better for my family, moving to some of these areas, and it ends up being actually a little bit more affordable. Can you
Oh yeah.
talk through a little bit about like the cost comparison? Like, what would for what you're paying for a
Okay.
home there? How much? What would you get? closer to Chicago?
So the house I'm in now, I don't mind sharing. I got it for $270,000. It is 4-bedroom, 3-bath, just shy of 3,000 square feet, 2-car garage, paver patio, unfinished basement, which you see behind you. It's another 800 square feet. So it's a pretty freaking big house for 200. Like this house in Schaumburg would probably be $500,000. That I'm in right now. In Chicago, it'd be 750,000 to $1 million probably.
Yeah.
So for essentially the same house. So that's a big one too, is just the affordability factor, and you get way more bang for your buck. Now, granted, could I afford to pay, a $300,000 or $3,500 a month mortgage? Yes, but it would hurt really bad. I'd be house poor, and nobody wants that. So it just made a lot more sense too from a financial, because it is so much less expensive.
Yeah,
than it would be closer to the city.
Yeah, I think that's been the huge benefit of working from home. Is you do have a little bit more of that flexibility to say, like, I actually don't have to be so close to work anymore. Because I know you mentioned your commute used to be about an hour, and now your commute is like what you walk down the steps.
To work. Is my commute.
Yeah, so you get a little bit more agency of like, where do I actually want to choose, and then that can start. The affordability conversation doesn't have to be I'm stuck in this city. It's I actually have a little bit more freedom to move around. And I might actually enjoy it a little bit more than I anticipated. I think a lot of people can kind of get stuck in like, there's no way I want to move out to, wherever. But like you mentioned, it's something that you see like, oh, this is actually something that's really beneficial for us.
It totally is. And it's just so peaceful out here. Like I haven't seen the stars in forever but now at night I can see the stars.
Yeah, you forget they were there.
There's no there's no emergency vehicles blasting by at 2:30 a.m., or all hours. It's so much different. It's much more tranquil. And the people, it's just, I don't want to make like an indictment of, urban dwellers, but for example, like when I lived in, I never even knew any of my neighbors' names when I lived in people I lived next to for like 2 years.
Were you in like an apartment complex, or was it? Okay.
People are much more insular, and if like having casual chit chat with someone like on the elevator, they'd look at me like I was a serial killer. I would do that. Whereas like when I moved in here, pretty much like everyone that lived within a half-mile radius stopped by and it's like, hey, it's the new guy. You bought the Stedman place, and it was just way, way different than I was accustomed to.
Yeah, and you're sitting there thinking like all these people are serial killers.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of like internal program in the back of my mind, but yeah.
That's fantastic. So you bought in, this is such a tough market right now, because I know like you've commented on a lot of videos, and a lot of what you commented on tend to be around some of the frustration that you're experiencing putting in these offers. How many offers did you put in, and how long of a time period was this? Like from when you started maybe putting in your first offer to actually getting that accepted one?
About 5 months. So
wow. Okay.
About 5 months, and some of that was
patient guy.
Waiting for new houses to come on the market up here, because we're like I still get updates from Zillow for this zip code, and every time something comes up for sale up here, it's gone like instantly. So I'm convinced that people are buying them either buying them sight unseen, or it's an investor. It has to be going that quick. It wasn't quite that insane when I was buying, but it was still super, super competitive. So that's really the challenge, is making your offer. I tried to make it personal. So for example, on this house that I put the offer in, I know the agents don't want you to talk directly to the homeowner, but I basically just told my agent, tell him this, like, I'm not an investor. I have a wife, I have a family, I want to raise children here. And that, believe it or not, that personal touch put me up the top. There was somebody that offered more money for this house, but the seller gave it to me because I said that, which is crazy to think about. But so it wasn't money that gave this house. It was that little personal touch.
Yeah. So instead of doing like an offer letter, you basically had your realtor kind of do that for you, kind of communicate your guys' interest in the home. Cool.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that was compelling to them. So, and of course I met them at closing, which made more sense, that I was able to see why that appeal resonated with them, when I met them at closing. But that's basically what I did. It's like, I can't remember exactly what I wrote it out and I had my real estate agent convey it, but they accepted the next day after I
Yeah.
turned that into them. So ultimately, it wasn't money that got me this place.
Yeah.
Well, still money, just less than I probably would have had to otherwise. So
Yeah. And what offer number was this? Like, how many offers did you put on different homes?
oh, sure. So this was offer 6.
Okay.
I had the most gut wrenching of the previous offers was offer 4, and that was a house actually not terribly far from here, but in this state in Illinois, they have a 5-day waiting period. So after you have an accepted offer from the seller, either the buyer or seller has 5 days where they can basically walk. And on day 5, the last day, the seller took a cash offer and walked. Yeah. And after day 5, I thought my search is over. Hey, no, this is all good. So that was particularly crushing.
Right. Yeah.
And I was unaware of the whole 5-day thing either until my realtor clued me in. But yeah, that was pretty crushing.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, to keep putting in, at that point, you were putting in your 4th offer, and then you're finally like, oh, this is solid. And then it turns out, I imagine, was it something like they had a right of refusal?
Right. So I can't remember the exact name of the paperwork that I got back. But that's basically what it was. So either party can walk away after 5 days. So I'd already put earnest money down, for example, on the whole 9. So yeah, I don't remember the exact name of the document, but basically in this state you can walk within 5 days, and that's what happened.
Yeah, that's frustrating. Did something change between you did your first offer to your 6th offer? Did anything change in that? Are they pretty similar offers, or what was that progression like?
I pretty much stopped asking for closing costs after offer 2. It just became quite clear that that it was just no longer tenable to go that route and to try to get closing costs. I also got more aggressive on price. So after offer number 2, I basically offered them full price.
Okay.
I was offering over full price until offer 4. So offer 4, they wanted $270, and I offered them $280 with no contingencies. So, which is a pretty sweet deal for them, but apparently it wasn't enough.
Yeah. And are you comfortable sharing what was the discrepancy between the list price and what you paid for this home?
So this one was listed for $274. It was an open house on a Saturday. So I went to the first open house after it was listed, and I wanted it. So I offered them, I think I offered $270. So I think the way it worked out now, they increased the price probably from their real estate agent's for their real estate agent's suggestion. They increased it to $274, and then after I put the offer in, I was hoping to hear back the next day, and I didn't. And that's when I had my real estate agent convey, hey, this is us, this is me, we're real people, and this is why we want to live here.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. After all the real estate finagling, it was just kind of a pure personal appeal. I think that is what helps. And after I met them at closing, because there's a lot of chit chat around the table during closing.
Right. Yeah.
That's what got me this house. I might still be looking for all I know.
Yeah. So you had this agent that you were working with who obviously helped you out a ton by being able to communicate, why you wanted to purchase this home. Obviously, it was a really good match for the seller too. Now you encountered a couple agents along the way that maybe weren't on board with, not necessarily not helping you in that capacity, but not on board with helping you in the way that you're looking for.
Right. So, I mean, I realize they're busy because the agents up here, they give you one. If they didn't sell you on that first initial house tour, they pretty much ignored you. And I felt like I shouldn't be the one tracking them down to line up showings. It should be the opposite.
Yeah,
so
you're
I
sitting
went
there with money, like
yeah. So I went through 4 agents, and I ended up going basically a little niche boutique agency. A guy that used to work for Remax. He started his own firm, brought a couple of people on board with him. They were much better. So yeah, we switched a lot of real estate agents, but which is different for me. I'm a pretty loyal guy, but I mean, I expect at least a modicum of customer service when I'm going to be making the largest purchase of my life. And I didn't feel like I was getting that from the the Remaxes and all the big boys of the market. So
yeah. I think you touched on something huge, which was, a lot of people can feel that too. They feel this like tension of my realtor's not doing the things I want, or the lender's not doing the things I want, but I also want to be loyal to them. Like I want to be respectful of this business relationship that we have. But at the same time, you're also the person who's the advocate for you and your family moving forward. And so
Yeah.
there's that way that you have to have those frank, direct, still kind, but direct conversations about
Sure,
this isn't working and I need to find something that does. It doesn't look like this is the path that's going to be working for us.
It kind of felt like a work scenario where I'm firing someone, where I'm firing someone in my team.
Right.
It felt almost like that. But at the same time, if they're, and especially in a market that's moving this fast, I needed someone that could rapidly respond to what I needed. So, and I finally found one. But yeah, that was a frustrating process as well. Dealing with agents.
So to find these realtors that you were reaching out to, and ultimately the one that you ended up working with, were you just calling around? Were you getting recommendations from people? How did you find these people?
This one in particular just happened to be the listing agent on a house that we were looking at. So that's how we ran across him. He was actually there at the house when we went to see the open house. We didn't end up getting that house, but he was the listing agent at one of the open houses. So I picked up his card, and I don't know. It's like any other business relationship. When you talk with someone, you kind of develop like a vibe and a rapport. And I definitely had that feeling from him. And then at that point, once I started working with him, he was also much younger dude, very, very aggressive, kind of a hard charger type. And I kind of am too in the way I deal with my business. So we kind of clicked, and lo and behold, that's what it took to get us over the finish line. It's a long road.
Yeah, and people forget sometimes too that like you can shop around with your real estate agent. Like if it's not going to work, or like you mentioned, like you shouldn't be the one having to chase down your real estate agent. You're sitting there literally saying like, I'm ready to go spend almost $300,000. Like I need somebody who's going to help me work with that. I shouldn't have to be convincing somebody to represent me in this process. Because I think the way that the agent works with us individually, like works with you, is going to be how they're going to work with the seller and negotiating your offer. So if they're not good in pitching themselves as an agent working well for you, then they're not going to pitch you as a buyer very well to the seller. I think that's what you found, is you found somebody who's like, they represent themselves well in the same way that you represent yourself at work. And that offer went through because of the way that they presented your offer. So I think it's super important for people to realize like the relationship that's being modeled between you and your realtor is almost exactly what's going to happen between your offer and the seller when it's presented by the realtor.
100%.
You found the realtor. Did you talk with multiple lenders too?
I did, and I kind of got into a situation there where I just felt I found somebody I felt comfortable with. So, I went through the online houses like your Rocket Mortgages of the world, and then I also went to the bank that I do my personal banking at. And then I think one other, and it was just, again, somebody that I found like a pretty instant rapport with. And he was also, we text back and forth pretty much daily. And more than anything, that guy just calmed my nerves, because there when we're getting, 2 weeks out, I'm waiting for my clear to close. And you're in the pressure cooker at that point.
Sure.
When you got a closing and you're waiting on a clear to close. And he just reassured me, it's all good. We got this. This is going to happen. You just need to calm down. Because I was wigging out there for a while.
Sure. Yeah.
Closely. I'm sure you've seen in your business too, that a lot of people, when they're waiting on their clear to close, they're probably bugging the hell out of you, sending you 10 emails and texts. That was me. I was that guy. So
sure. I mean, it's understandable. It's the first time you go through this process. So of course you're going to be on edge and anxious and fearful of like, what could happen next? Is something going to come up? This has already happened once with one deal. I went through, offer number 4, and that got canceled, not because of the underwriting process, but then in your mind, you start to feel like, I see all these patterns of things could just immediately fall apart. And so it makes sense. And so it's good to have somebody on your side who can actually help you, reassure what's going on there. Especially somebody who can.
Good rate too. That was another thing too. You got me a really good rate. So
was it, how different was it compared from what you were seeing through like online in your local bank?
They beat it, not by a ton, but they beat it. So I ended up getting 2.375% is my rate. And they were able to beat it. But I mean, beyond just that, the guy just worked harder for me. I mean, those big online houses, you just don't get that level of customer service. I didn't feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. The good rate that doesn't suck either. So
sure. Yeah.
because I'm building equity much more rapidly with a lower rate. So.
Yeah, yeah, and it'd be difficult too to go through. This is what I hear a lot with online lenders is sometimes they end up having a little bit lower of a rate. It's usually not a ton. If we actually look at like an amortization table, a slightly lower rate of an online lender sometimes really isn't going to save us, groundbreaking type of money as much as we think in our head it does. But then that poor experience or not closing on time can actually kill us out of a deal. Like we get out of contract or something like that happens. So you mentioned you were under contract for a period of time, or it was around 2 months, right?
Yes, and there were several factors going on there. So the people that were currently occupying this house were moving to South Carolina, so I had their timetable I had to deal with a little bit too. I think initially they were a little taken aback that they got an offer so quickly. I mean, the house was only on the market 5 days when we hadn't accepted offer.
They were just dipping their toe in the water and they're like, oh shoot, we didn't realize.
So they got their time frame. Because I mean, as a seller, they probably weren't paying attention. They didn't realize how quickly the market was moving. Whereas, I knew damn well what I was walking into with the house. So they had to accelerate their time frame. But they ended up being, like I said, it was a couple months. But a lot of things with the lender, and then the underwriting process was just so much longer than is typical, I'm told. So,
okay,
a lot of back and forth.
Sure,
like my entire financial history from birth until now, almost pretty much.
It definitely feels like that. Yeah, yeah. It's the underwriting process is I think more than people anticipate, and they just ask for lots of things. And like you saw, sometimes it's going back and forth and we got this document, but this document showed us something else that we have to ask for, or, those kinds of things where it's like, really?
Yeah. Some of these minute details in the underwriting process and having to get everything signed and dated. And that was so annoying. The underwriter is obviously different than the loan officer. So I was dealing with an entirely different person, and she was sweet as you could possibly be, but I still wanted to strangle her by the time it was all said.
and that's the frustrating part too, is I guarantee that underwriter is so happy that you're in a home and is so happy that you went through the process, especially in, with this market, feels like all the odds are stacked against you. And the frustrating part with underwriting is I know, I talk with underwriters, they don't hate people. They don't hate people getting into homes. They want people to get into homes. They just have to follow the rules that they were given, which sucks.
They have a protocol they have to adhere to, or it's on them if they don't. So I get it, but that doesn't make it any less frustrating on the buyers things. At
Absolutely.
The same time,
Yeah, and that's where it's good. Like you mentioned, to have that loan officer there who can help kind of reassure and reaffirm what's going on. Like this is normal, or maybe it's a little bit abnormal, but this is why things are keeping on track and on pace.
Sure.
So you went with an FHA loan.
I did.
Can you talk a little bit about that decision, choosing the FHA loan, and then maybe what you might be looking for in the future?
Right. So mainly because I didn't want to take cash out of my 401k to get myself over the threshold. I wanted to pay for everything in cash. So that's why FHA seemed the most attractive. In retrospect, one thing that I think wasn't explained to me in as much detail as I thought needed to be was having to carry mortgage insurance for a term of the loan, which is in my case, $160 forever. Because of that, at some point I might refinance down the line, because it's really the only way you can get out of going with that. The only other thing that I probably might have considered is going USDA, but as it turns out, I make too much money for that, unfortunately.
Oh, what a bummer! I'm so sorry for you.
A lot of my neighbors up here now did take advantage of that, and honestly, from what I read, it seems to be I don't think there's a loan offer out there that is more compelling or advantageous to the buyer than that one. It's just the income restrictions on it aren't as good.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't do, if it's possible, my suggestion, if it's possible to go conventional, you're going to be saving yourself a lot of money down the line, just because of the fact of you're going to be paying that mortgage insurance for term, for 30 years or however long, 15 years, whatever the case may be. And that adds up a lot. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And still too, getting an FHA loan is not and by any means like the wrong choice or the bad choice. Especially if we look like historically, you're still, even if you did an FHA loan with mortgage insurance, you're like, oh, I should have gone, or I could have gone conventional. Looking back on it now, historically, you're still saving tons of money compared to what rates used to be and how much it used to cost to purchase a home. Like you're still coming out ahead historically. And I sometimes think we can beat ourselves up a little bit of like, oh, I could have got this much lower, this much lower, this much lower. And
everyone wants to play Monday morning quarterback with this stuff, and I'm no different. So
yeah, and in the end, we're kind of making small compromises here and there. Whether that's, you talked about the compromise of like, well, I don't want to pull things out of my 401k. Okay, well, that's a small compromise that we're making. Maybe I'm going to the FHA loan because of that. Or, you mentioned like, I don't think we talked about this. I know we talked about this a little bit earlier. You talked about, this home maybe was a little bit more of a compromise compared to some of the other ones that you're looking at. But it's something that can be built towards what you're looking for.
Right. And I was wore down. I was sick of looking. I was sick of putting in offers. I was ready for the process to be over.
Right. Especially 5 months in. Yeah.
Yeah. I was wore down. I admit I made some compromises on this house that I probably wouldn't have if it was offer number 1 as opposed to offer number 6. But that being said, I don't have buyer's regret. I love this place. And actually, the unfinished basement is going to turn out to be awesome because now I can mold it into whatever I want. So. Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll do another video after this place is finished, and I'll give you a tour.
Yeah, I'd love to. Is this just your space? Is it just going to be yours, or are you turning it into like more?
I think I'm going to it's almost 1,000 square foot down here, so I think I'm going to. Already paid the down payment to the contractor. It's going to be a bedroom, a 4th bathroom, and then just a big, huge den. So all my game consoles and stuff are probably going to be coming down here. So
can you talk a little bit about starting that process? Because I know a lot of people I think are moving into homes and trying to figure out like how do I get money for doing rehab work or adding something on. Can you walk through that process a little bit?
So, this was interesting. So I started getting bids from contractors, and not shockingly, they're all ridiculously busy right now too. So we finally got one we were comfortable with, and then they basically gave us a bid. So and the bid, I don't mind saying, it's to do this whole basement basically. So laminate flooring, and they're going to spray the ceiling with the black stuff. Didn't want to put in what's called a drop ceiling, but it's a little over $30K to do the whole thing. So basically that I am taking money out of 401k for to do just because I really want this space, and it's going to be basically my workspace, at least part of it. So the extra bedroom down here is probably going to be my office for the time being. And then it's just a matter of permitting. So going through the city, or in my case, the village and the county to get that taken care of. And then the assessor has to come out. In this state, you can file for 4 years, you can file an exemption on property taxes. So for 4 years, they won't charge you whatever the increase your property value is. And you get a 4-year exemption before you have to pay property taxes on the additional, what it does to your house. And they said it would take about, they're going to start in April. I think it'll take 5 weeks, they said, to get this done. So they sent me the plans. I had to approve the plans. Then I put down the $10K as the deposit. And so now it's just a matter of moving a lot of this stuff out of here so they can come down here and do it.
Yeah. Do you know what that timeline looks like?
Grand total, like I said, it's going to take them 4 or 5 weeks total, I think they said when they're down here.
Okay, that's not terrible.
I have to get a construction permit, and construction permit has to be taped basically to the front door. I have to leave the garage open, and it's not going to be fun because there's going to be people coming in and around the house. But the good thing is in this house, when they come in from the garage, they can pretty much immediately come right down here. So there's like a little mud room, and then they can go immediately down here. So it won't be as much disruption as it might be otherwise, but there's still going to be people with, power tools down here.
Sure. Yeah.
So, which should be interesting when I'm doing things like this, in a professional capacity.
Sure. Well, at least you have a good story to go along with it.
Yeah, for sure. And already my 20-month-old daughter, she comes down here when daddy's doing his Zoom meetings, and I thought that might be a distraction, but all my clients were like, "Oh my God, she's so adorable!" And she's actually been a hand.
Yeah, it reminds me of that. Did you see that news clip of was it the guy on BBC? He was on a call, and I think it was his daughter and or his son and daughter like came in. One was on in like the little chair, and
Right, right.
he was all embarrassed. I was like, no, 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 no. People like that. It's okay. It's not too much of a distraction.
Yeah, it kind of broke my like whole professionalism like wall I put up when I'm
Hmm.
like planning or going over financial records and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
yeah, my clients loved it. That was
yeah,
hilarious. So,
yeah. They're like, oh yeah, yeah. You're a human. We forgot about
yeah,
that.
yeah, I forgot about that. I just sitting here reading us budgets and figures from last quarter, and which is what I
Yeah,
normally do. I'm normally I'm kind of standoffish with my clients. I'm cordial, but I'm not like super personal. But when you're
sure.
doing this stuff in your home, you almost don't have a choice but to
Hmm.
let people into your life a little bit. So
Yeah, you're
um,
physically inviting work into your
yeah,
life. Yeah,
exactly. So definitely different, but no, it's cool because now they'll see stuff in the background depending on where I am in the house, and be like, oh, so you're a Grateful Dead fan, or oh, you're next. They see stuff in my house, and that's like a
yeah,
conversation point. And half the time we'll talk about that more than we're talking about like work,
yeah, yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is different. But
I love it, man. Well, man,
nope.
I'm so excited that it's been cool to see some of that progression that you've had because
Mhm.
I've seen the comments from. I need to go back and look. I think it'd be cool. I need to send some of the comments to you. I'm sure you could find them too, but just to see the progression of you going from the very beginning to now being in a home that you enjoy. It's something that works well for your family, and you can see moving in a direction that's going to help you and your family grow the way that you want to, which I think is really
Yeah.
awesome.
Plus, for my comment history, you got to see the whole metamorphosis,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
the whole process.
I got to see the highs and the lows
Mhm.
both at the same time. So it's good to see.
For sure.
And you've certainly you put in a lot of work to get to where you're at. And so it's no easy feat to purchase a home. And so I think you should be real proud of where you're at, especially considering buying in this market. I think is super top. So
Yeah.
your
Great to have.
patience is super high. And your ability to stay as calm as possible through the process, I think is says a lot about your character too. So, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Anytime.